3 years ago, Theresa May was set to reform housing and renting in particular, getting rid of the much hated Section 21 eviction orders, which are basically a landlord can just turn around and just say, out, you're gone. Sorry. And unfortunately, that was not passed. It didn't make it through. And even though the Tories have yet since continued to say that we will deal with this, just remember this. This is the exact same language they have used for years about getting rid of 0 hour contracts, or that they need to do something about 0 hour contracts. And time again, I've turned around and looked at it and just gone, look, at this point, you've said that you would rather continue the status quo than actually make any serious changes to 0 hour contracts. So we can only really conclude that your inaction is almost a tacit acceptance of the current status quo, and you are actually quite in favor of 0 hour contracts. And unfortunately, this does seem to be the state for, well, renting in general. And don't get me wrong, renting is just part of our very large housing crisis. In fact, to quote one Edmund Blackadder, of course, he said this famously, that this is a crisis, a large crisis. It's a 12-story crisis with a magnificent entrance hall carpeting throughout the 24-hour portraitage, and of course the enormous sign on the roof saying this is a large crisis. Indeed, the housing crisis has been going on for so long. It is almost the original crisis. I mean, I've said, I don't know how many times before I've said it, but this doesn't feel like we're in a housing crisis, because people always say we are in a housing crisis. It feels more like we are in a housing disaster that's gone far beyond a crisis point and has really sort of reached that level. And of course, what's the consequence of this? Well, it's basically meant that private landlords have been swimming in vast amounts of money for years, getting away with all kinds of very crafty tricks with, again, Section 21 notices. And anyone who has ever rented throughout the UK has at some point in their time during these times been a victim of Section 21 notices. You just get a letter saying, yep, you've got 3 months, out you go. Sometimes it can maybe even be shorter than that, depending on how they try and spin it and justify it. But yeah, trust me, there have been many. I wouldn't be surprised if people on this channel now have been sort of dreaded that letter from their landlord in this case. And unfortunately, coming up with this winter, we have a bigger housing crisis with the renting crisis going on. You are seeing mortgages increase, you are seeing rents increase, and this is just going to cause huge more problems to people, and especially at a time when we should be really defending these people. But unfortunately, of course, we have a Tory government which decides it's not really going to defend these people at all. It would rather, shall we say, help the landlords who are profiting off many of these very dangerous tricks. I mean, it's not just that. We're also talking about standards as well. And they have resisted numerous times. A big classic example was, I think it was Nottingham Council tried to pass a basic housing rights bill to say, if you are a landlord, you must promise like this, and this. And it was really basic stuff like, no mold. It's, your building's got to be livable and, in a livable working condition. Really basic stuff, which you would expect a landlord to already be fulfilling. But many landlords just do not do that. And I always know someone always does it. But not all landlords are like that. There are good landlords out there. And then someone goes, but what about, the bad tenants? Well, we don't really care about that at the moment. We're talking about landlords because they aren't really good, to be honest, for a society as a whole and in general. And unfortunately, they continue to buy up, shall we say, more housing prices and more stock and even new housing stuff. And of course, I'm off to Ireland I probably am in Ireland at this point. talk to anyone in Ireland about the housing crisis they've got at the moment. And to be honest, even though we've got a housing crisis over here, I'm glad, I'm not involved in whatever crazy lottery system of a housing crisis and buying system they have going on over in Ireland. It seems absolutely crazy that you guys over there have allowed it to at least go to that stage. But that's another video for another time. Maybe we'll talk about that next week when we will try and pull over someone from the Irish delegation to get them to talk about what it's like to actually buy a house in Ireland. Because honestly, the labyrinthian steps you have to go through are quite crazy. But yeah, so as always, thank you very much for watching, guys. Like I say, do hope you've enjoyed it. Like I say, please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button on your way out. And of course, down below there are links to my Patreon page and a motivation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you all next time.